Right now, somewhere inside your body, there is a piece of plastic that did not come from a factory accident. It came from your kitchen. And in the last 5 years, scientists have found these pieces in places no one expected them to be. Not in the ocean, not in some landfill on the other side of the world. Inside human blood, inside human urine, inside the actual tissue of human kidneys. Stop for a second and think about that. Your kidneys filter almost 200 liters of fluid every single day. They are the cleanup crew of your entire body. And researchers have now confirmed that the cleanup crew itself has plastic sitting inside it. If you are watching this, hit subscribe, because what you are about to hear is not the version of this story that gets repeated on the news. This is the part most people never see. It started with a question that sounded almost too simple. If plastic is in the ocean, in the soil, in the air we breathe, is it also in us? For a long time, nobody could prove it because the particles are so small that normal lab equipment could not even detect them. We are talking about fragments smaller than the width of a human hair. Invisible, untraceable, or so everyone thought. Then, in 2022, a team of researchers ran blood samples from ordinary adults through a highly sensitive technique. And what they found made headlines for about a day and then quietly disappeared from public conversation. Plastic in the blood of 17 out of 22 people tested. Not trace amounts in some abstract sense, actual identifiable polymer fragments floating through the bloodstream of healthy adults who had never worked in a plastics factory, never lived near a dump site. Just regular people, people like you. But here is where things get disturbing. Blood does not stay in your veins. It moves. It travels through every organ you have, and it gets filtered, again and again, by one organ in particular, your kidneys. So scientists asked the next obvious question. If plastic is in the blood, and the kidneys filter the blood, what happens when that plastic reaches the kidney itself? In 2024, researchers used a technique called micro-Raman spectroscopy, a method sensitive enough to identify the exact chemical fingerprint of a particle smaller than a grain of sand, and they pointed it directly at human kidney tissue and human urine. What they found was the first confirmed evidence of microplastic deposits actually sitting inside human kidneys. Dozens of fragments. Polyethylene, polystyrene, the same materials used in food containers, plastic wrap, and the lining of certain cookware. The kidneys were not just filtering plastic, they were holding on to it. And this is where everything changed. Because up until that point, microplastics were treated like an environmental story, something about turtles and beaches and recycling bins. But now it was a medical story. A story about the organ that decides what stays in your body and what gets flushed out. An organ that, for some people, is already working at a fraction of its original strength. Here is something most people do not know about their own bodies. Kidney function does not stay the same your whole life. It quietly declines with age, often without a single symptom. By the time most people reach their 60s or 70s, their kidneys may already be filtering at 60, 50, sometimes even 40% of the capacity they had in their 20s. No pain, no warning sign, just a slow, silent decline that almost nobody feels happening. Now picture that aging filter, already working harder than it should have to, suddenly being asked to deal with something it was never designed to filter at all. Plastic particles do not break down the way food waste or normal toxins do. The body has no built-in system for digesting polyethylene. So when these particles arrive at the kidney does not know what to do with them. But that was not even the real shock. The real shock came from what these particles do once they are there. In laboratory studies, when kidney cells were exposed to microplastic particles at levels similar to what a real person might encounter over years of exposure, researchers observed something they did not expect. The cells began showing signs of oxidative stress, inflammation. In some experiments using lab-grown human kidney tissue, the structures responsible for filtering blood actually developed abnormally, becoming smaller and less functional than tissue that was never exposed. Read that again. Not damaged after years of exposure in a person. Developmentally altered from exposure alone in controlled lab conditions. And the deeper scientists looked, the stranger it became. One study looked at people who already had advanced liver disease, a condition called cirrhosis. When researchers examined tissue samples from these patients, they found microplastic particles not just in the liver, but in the kidney and spleen as well, while tissue from healthy individuals without liver disease showed none. The implication was unsettling. People whose organs were already under stress seemed to be accumulating more plastic in their bodies, not less. Now here is the part that should genuinely concern anyone over the age of 50. There is a population of people whose blood gets filtered by a machine instead of their own kidneys. People on dialysis. Their blood passes through tubing, filters, and plastic components multiple times a week, for hours at a time. Researchers studying this group have raised a quiet but serious concern that patients with kidney failure may be exposed to even higher levels of particulate plastic simply because of the medical equipment keeping them alive. The very treatment designed to save a failing kidney may be introducing more of the substance that is already accumulating inside it. Think about the layers of irony in that for a moment. A person spends decades unknowingly accumulating microscopic plastic from food packaging, from hot drinks in plastic cups, from leftovers microwaved in plastic containers. Their kidneys slowly weaken, partly from age, partly perhaps from this invisible accumulation. And then, when the kidneys finally need outside help, the treatment itself becomes another source of exposure. It is a loop, a closed loop that nobody designed, and nobody is fully tracking. But there is a bigger implication hiding underneath all of this, and it has to do with one specific item that sits in almost every kitchen in America: non-stick cookware. For decades, non-stick pans were marketed as the easy, healthy choice. Less oil, easy cleanup, effortless cooking. But the coating that makes a pan non-stick is built from a family of synthetic compounds designed to survive heat, water, and time without breaking down. That durability is exactly the problem. When these coatings are scratched, overheated, or simply age over years of use, microscopic fragments can release into the food being cooked. And once swallowed, those fragments do not just pass through. Some of them are absorbed. Separate from microplastics entirely, but moving along the same general path, is a group of synthetic chemicals associated with non-stick coatings that have been independently linked in scientific research to changes in kidney function over time. These compounds are persistent, meaning the body struggles to break them down or remove them, and they have been detected in the blood of the vast majority of people tested in national health surveys. Not just in factory workers, but in ordinary households. So you have two separate but related threats, both converging on the same organ. Microplastic fragments, increasingly found in blood, urine, and kidney tissue itself, and persistent chemical compounds shed from everyday cookware that have been studied for their relationship to kidney function. Different substances, same destination, same vulnerable organ, especially in people whose kidneys are already aging. And here is the part that turns this from a scientific curiosity into something deeply human. Most seniors do not feel their kidneys declining. There is no internal alarm, no pain receptor inside the kidney that screams when something is wrong. By the time symptoms like fatigue, swelling, or changes in urination become noticeable, kidney function has often already dropped significantly. Doctors sometimes call the kidney a silent organ because it can lose a large portion of its function before a person feels anything at all. So picture an everyday scene. An older adult, living alone or with a partner, reheating last night's dinner in the same scratched plastic container they have used for years, on a non-stick pan that has been in the cupboard for over a decade. Nothing about that moment feels dangerous. There is no smell, no taste, no sensation. It is one of the most ordinary moments of an ordinary day. But according to the research we just walked through, that ordinary moment may be part of a slow accumulation happening inside an organ that has already lost a significant portion of its original capacity. An organ that has no way of signaling distress until the damage is substantial. This is where the story stops being about plastic and starts being about something much older, something philosophical. Human beings are remarkably good at reacting to threats they can see, hear, or feel. A fire, a loud noise, a sharp pain. Our entire nervous system evolved around immediate sensory danger. But we are almost completely unequipped to respond to threats that are slow, invisible, and silent. A particle smaller than a grain of salt, sitting inside an organ for years, causing no sensation at all, simply does not register on the emotional radar that has kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. In a strange way, the most dangerous things in modern life are not the things that scare us. They are the things that feel completely normal. A plastic container, a familiar pan, A daily routine repeated so many times it becomes invisible, the way a sound becomes invisible once you hear it long enough to stop noticing it. And maybe that is the real discovery hiding underneath all of this research. Not that plastic is in our bodies, scientists have been confirming that piece by piece for years now. The real discovery is how comfortable we have become living alongside something we cannot see, cannot feel, and have almost no instinct to fear. For someone younger, with decades of kidney function still in reserve, this might be a slow background concern. But for someone older, whose filtering capacity has already quietly declined over a lifetime, every additional invisible burden matters more, simply because there is less reserve left to absorb it. Scientists are still in the early stages of understanding exactly how much of this accumulation translates into real disease in real people. Some of the most alarming findings come from lab studies and animal models, not yet from large-scale human trials. That uncertainty is not comforting, but it is honest. And in some ways, the uncertainty itself is part of the story. We are, all of us, living inside a long-term experiment that started decades ago, without ever signing up for it, without ever being told the terms, and without knowing yet how it ends. So here is the question worth sitting with, long after this video ends. If the most dangerous things in our daily lives are the ones that feel the most normal, the ones built into routines so familiar we stopped questioning them decades ago, then what else, right now, in your kitchen, in your daily habits, in the things you touch without thinking, might be quietly writing a story inside your body that you will not be able to read until years from now? We like to think of danger as something loud, something obvious, something we would notice. But maybe the truest danger has always been the opposite. Quiet, familiar, sitting on your counter right where you left it last night. If this left you thinking differently about something in your own kitchen, that is exactly the point. Share what stood out to you, because the more people start asking these questions, the more this conversation grows. And if you want to keep uncovering the hidden truths sitting inside everyday life, subscribe to Dr. Victoria Reed, because this is only the beginning of what we are going to expose.